Hey guys, it's Michelle of Colorado 200 with Jimmy, my little guinea pig. He has made his journey and is now in his taper week for Colorado 200. And we're talking with him a little bit on his race strategy, going into the race, how he's feeling, and any other questions he may have. And then we're going to drill him with rest, rest, rest this week. And so bring it on, Jimmy. What do you got for me?
Yeah, well, before I guess I dive into the questions, I'll talk a little bit about where I'm at and how I feel. A little tired, but I think taper week is always, the last couple weeks is always tough because you get in this kind of routine and then it's like, and then your body's like trying to figure out what's going on. So I got to sleep a little bit better over the next few nights. I was talking to Matt Barnes this morning when I went down to see him and just told him, hey, I got to start sleeping better over these last final 5 days. So a little tired, a little sore, but I'm healthy. I feel a little under the weather today, a little cold, but like not a big deal. Like I've said before, I think I just wanted to get to this point healthy with no injuries, and I'm there, and that's important. Because for a race like this, I kind of feel like you got to go to the starting line healthy, or it's going to be a tough go. So I'm happy that I'm there. So feeling good. I'm, starting to get a little scared now. I guess now's the time to start worrying. but no, feel good, feel confident, and ready to rock and roll. So I guess some questions I have. Probably one of my biggest concerns about this race is with the water crossings and with the dampness and moisture is obviously going to be a big issue managing that. Is any tips or tricks on taking care of feet? Because feet maintenance is going to be huge.
Duct tape. Just kidding. It can work. Actually, if you're in a bind, it can work if you wrap your feet with some duct tape, at least for a little while. However, each one of you racers will actually get a trail toes kit, which is really small and packable, and it has everything that you could and want to use in there. There'll also be some giveaways before we actually even race that will help. So thanks to Trail Toes for that. But so for personally, I don't really change out too often. Not that I've done a 200 miler. Gia will be our guest speaker. This is something that you might want to ask her right on Tuesday when we're at check-in. She'll be speaking. But for a 100 miler, even with wet feet, we just run through it. So for a 200 miler, I'd say when you rest, which I feel like will be around that 100-mile mark. I know we'll probably get to that. But sleep-wise, when you sleep, when you rest, when you wake up and want to be refreshed, that's when I would suggest changing out. And I would suggest changing out in this race at least once. And in order to keep your feet dry and the moisture out, it's going to be impossible. It's just something that you're going to have to run through because there are so many water crossings. So, if you're trying to avoid the puddles, it's not going to happen because you're going to walk right through some rivers and you're just going to have to tough it out in that sense. I think going in, you make sure you're wearing a great sock. Drymax, we're providing Drymax socks for everyone. So if you like them, that would be a good tool to use. Don't wear any kind of frumpy cotton socks that have any overlays or get all bunched up or anything like that, because that's typically what will cause a blister as well. But besides for that, going into a race, I'll smother on some Trail Toes, put some compression socks, and give her a go.
Okay, thoughts on wearing, I know this is something a lot of people do, 2 layers of socks to cut down on the friction. What are your thoughts on that? It's not something I've done in the past. I don't know.
I don't. I'm just a huge compression sock fan, and even though I would say the research states that it doesn't really help during, it helps more after. Heck yeah, I agree, it helps after, but I really feel like in these longer ultras, it really helps during as well. So huge fan of those. Just one pair. Feel like don't bunch it up if you don't need to.
Okay, cool. You kind of touched on it I think just briefly, but sleep. I mean, what are your thoughts? My initial thought was I kind of wanted to get to 100 miles before I started really thinking about sleep. But the more I thought about it, and also talking to some people that ran it last year, they said don't be shy to take a nap early in the race if you feel like it would really help. I think I definitely want to try to get to that 100-mile point before I get any. And I plan to sleep. I guess we'll just say that from the start. I do plan to get some sleep. That's definitely not a plan. But I think mentally and emotionally, it would really be great to get to that 100-mile point before I really. What are your thoughts there?
So I was just going to say, mentally and then physically, you're going to be so hyped up, adrenaline's going to be going, that you really need to make sure that you're tired, that you're pretty waxed before you want to lay down, because otherwise you're going to lay down and your mind's just going to be running and it's not going to be as beneficial as it could be. Granted, any kind of rest period like that will be beneficial physically. However, I'd suggest trying to push to that 100-mile mark. At least late into the night. You know that you can stay up late into a night. You're going out sometime to the bar or whatever. You know that, and you know that you get pretty exhausted.
I don't know what you're talking about there.
I don't anymore, but you get pretty exhausted, and then mentally you'll be ready for that break, and you'll be ready to take a good couple hour nap, and you absolutely will need to sleep. So if you approach even the 60-mile mark or something, and you're already feeling that way, because obviously this is a really challenging course. Depending on the elements, they're calling for some rain and stuff. Could be slippery, muddy out there. You're going to be tired a lot quicker. So, following the rule of the other people, don't be shy. If you feel ready to take a nap, go ahead and take a nap for sure. And I keep it to just a couple hours. I wouldn't do a nice 8-hour period, but a couple hours and then keep moving on. You'll reach a point to where you're going to feel like a zombie, and it's going to be one foot in front of the other, and anything that you absolutely can do to get through the race.
Yeah.
But you want to rest before you get to that point, because if you get to that point, you're not going to get up.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Another question I had is, with the being a 200-mile race, it presents logistical challenges that you're not going to see in a 100-mile race or really any shorter races. And trying to coordinate with your crew and your pacers and all that over the course, over 200 miles, it's harder to predict pace, times, all those things. And, with a unique course, just general tips or tricks for coordination of crew, coordination of pacers, and just anything you saw last year that might be worth mentioning, passing along to them?
Well, so if they are in areas that get reception, because there are areas that do and there are areas that don't, we actually have the live tracking, which will be updated every 5 minutes. You carry your tracker on you, which is a really cool aspect, I feel, of this race and just the ultra community in general. Because it's really rare that you can actually watch a trail race go down, or you're constantly looking for somebody to tweet something. So that'll be a really awesome thing. That's a safety thing feature for us as well, to make sure you guys are staying on course and to go correct anybody who goes off course and correct them as fast as we possibly can. So anyways, so hopefully that'll give your crew an idea of where you're at, and it doesn't just kind of leave them hanging as probably it would at maybe another 200-miler or a bigger 100-miler event that might not have that.
Right.
But anyways, tips and tricks are to have them be prepared as possible. I would suggest you leaving drop bags at all the locations that you can, but then having your crew have spare stuff as well. So you do need a lot of duplicates, triplicates, whatever, especially gloves, socks, your shoes, just any kind of warm gear, and change out wet gear kind of stuff, because I doubt that you won't get wet on this ride. That's for sure. Like, you will most likely encounter at least one rainstorm. Obviously you're going through the water crossings, so you're going to get chilled. You're going to be in probably 30-degree weather at times, and then you're going to be up, in 70-degree weather at times. So it might feel even warmer since you're so high up. So it's just being prepared for those extremes and going through your closet and basically taking anything and everything that you can and you think that might be helpful. You're gonna, separate those out in your drop bags. And how I used to do it for 100 milers, or I would put one pair of gloves in each drop bag, even if that meant 10 pairs, and then I'd give like 3 more pairs to Wyatt or my crew. So if I needed change outs along the way and I missed a drop bag, or a bear ate my drop bag, or something like that, then you're covered for sure. And it's all about having that gear. And as far as giving crew a guesstimate of where you're going to be, that's just super difficult, because again, in this type of race, the elements really play a big role. It doesn't matter how fast you typically are, how many times you've done a 200 miler, how many times you've done this course. It's going to change probably every single time you do it. So your best bet is to have somebody to be checking in with the trackers. We will have at least 2 people monitoring live tracking 24 hours, and we can give them, the numbers, their phone numbers or whatever. But then also checking in with the aid stations too, to see if, they know about where you are. So then when you are coming in, you can be prepared. I'd take a look at the course elevation and the course map and try to decide, if you're hitting like a few big climbs right away, at that next aid station, if your crew is going to be there, you want, a full-on meal kind of thing. So maybe they can get the aid station people to get your meal going for you. We have burgers, we have burritos, we have pizza, we have all sorts of hearty food as well as snack food to keep you going. And I would say don't be shy either about eating big, sooner rather than later, because later it's going to be too late for sure. So there's not really any other tips or tricks that I have for a 200 miler, because it's really hard to say, boom, boom, boom. There are sleep stations after the first, few aid stations, because you obviously shouldn't need to sleep after like 10 miles, but all of them are sleep stations after that. So, your crew can pitch a tent, wait for you, and they really don't need to be in a rush to try to get to you to the next spot, because it's going to take you a few hours and it probably won't take them quite as long. So again, just monitor and be prepared as possible. Have extras of everything and anything you can think of. But then you take, the race in your own hands and make sure you have what you need in drop bags, because you really can't depend on crew to be there, because like I said, it's remote. There's washed out roads, there can be people stuck in the mud, there can be just anything can happen. So you can't necessarily depend on your crew. You make sure that you have what you need. Use the aid stations at this event, that's for sure. And I wouldn't particularly recommend that at other events, but and then depend on your crew last.
Okay. Yeah, I think just generally kind of my thoughts on kind of preparation and with 200 miles, it's just so hard to have a very surgical strategy for the whole race, because it's just so hard to predict what conditions are going to be, what your pace is going to be, how you're going to be feeling. So kind of my mentality with this race is to have general strategies for how to handle my feet, how to handle sleep, but then just be open. So
let's break it down too. So, obviously 200 miles is such a vast mileage that you really want to do, and you can do this in any race. You can do this in a 10K too, but we'll probably want to break it down in quarters, 50, 50, 50, 50. So your first 50, or you can break it down even farther than that. So how do you feel? Do you feel like 50s would be a good breakdown, or would you like to break it down even farther?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think, that's kind of what my general thoughts were a little bit as far as breaking it down mentally.
So to me,
I feel like that first 100 though, that first 100 is like a completely different beast than the second 100, mentally, especially if my sleep strategy is going to be different in the second half. So.
Yep. And so to me, your body's going to hurt like hell after a certain point, no matter what. So, I get, I guess, made fun of maybe for taking out races a little too, or they think a little too fast. People think a little too fast. I'm not recommending that you take it out fast. I'm just saying a steady, solid pace is totally fine and acceptable. And I feel like that is not going to kill you for later on in the race necessarily. You should not be anywhere near redlining by any means. But I don't feel like you have to, hold hands with somebody and walk up the trail kind of thing, but just enjoy it at the same time. I think the one thing that it should be consistent is your eating as much as possible. That's probably going to go to hell later on in the race, given the race. But hopefully you'll be at least conservative enough to where you'll still have that appetite, and you'll be smart enough to start eating. Like in the first 15 minutes, you should be eating. Like you should have a big breakfast at least a couple hours before your race, and then just every 15 minutes you should be munching on something, and of course quality, really. Oreos, they'll get you through, but if you can manage to put in some healthier foods into your body, it's obviously going to perform better. It's going to work better. And if you're not used to eating Oreos either, it's probably going to tank your system and cause some issues there. Electrolytes will be a key here. So, monitoring those, I'd say every hour. And then, either with salt tabs or gels, or even like mixes like Tailwind and stuff too. You can do that as well. I always recommend drinking plain water first, and mostly, because with the mixes, you just don't know how strong you're making it typically, or how strong your crew made it, or how strong the aid stations made it. So you don't want to go overboard on that kind of stuff. Because of course at the aid stations too, the food is typically salty, a lot of salty options, that you're trying to push down your throat too. So you don't want your electrolytes to get off. So the more you can monitor those, the better. So, you could say, for example, 1 full gel every hour with plain water. And you really want to be shooting for at least 24 ounces of water an hour. It's a very dry climate out here. Even though they're calling for rain, it's been 90s to 100, and there's actually I think pretty big wildfire actually south of there. I don't think it's affecting our area at all. I'm not sure about the smoke yet, which kind of stinks, but I think it's pretty far south, so it's not a big deal for us. But it just gives you an idea that the climate can be very dry out here. And
yeah, one thing I've always been very lucky is I've always had a pretty ironclad GI. So it's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that I can eat usually. The curse is that I can eat anything, and I do, and that's bad. So I've got to have a better strategy throughout this race to eat the things that I think there's something to be said about eating what your body's telling you it wants to some degree, but also I need to your point, stay away from the Oreos and some of the junk.
So, I'd even take Oreos over any kind of dairy. So a lot of people want dairy. They like grilled cheese. They feel they can run well on that. And some people, they are okay with dairy, but typically in research, it's really not that great. It's not great for the gut, and it's not great when the intestines are so heated up. So if I could make a recommendation, I'd say stay away from the dairy. A burger would even be better. It takes a lot longer to digest, but burger without the cheese, bean and egg burrito without the cheese kind of thing, or just keeping it really light, so maybe that would be a good tip for you.
Yeah, nothing about dairy sounds good for a race. That sounds pretty awful. Yeah. I'll stay clear of that for sure.
Great. Yep. And our protein bars this year we're sponsored by Raw Revolution, and they're actually all gluten-free and dairy-free and soy-free. So they're a really great bar, I feel, to run on. And you'll like those, and they're just these little peanut power-packed things that I'd recommend you grabbing some at every aid station to take with you. And then, making sure you're eating some solid meals along the way as well. And really, I'd say probably like a solid meal every 50 miles.
Okay. I'll have no problem with that.
Awesome. Good.
I don't think you're going to have to tell me to eat more.
Good, because I will be out there.
Yeah, I know. yeah. So feel pretty good about that
Good.
aspect of the race. I don't really know that I wrote some notes down. That's all the questions that I had kind of written down to ask you at this point. Any final, anything we haven't talked about that you think is worth, warning me?
Nope. And like I said, it's just, first of all, in an ultra, it doesn't matter the length of the ultra, but especially the length of this one, I guess. Anything can happen, and a lot of it depends on elements. You're gonna go through you're going to go to the bottom of the well and back and forth probably twice. So, be prepared for that mentally for sure. And just really wrapping your mind around the pursuit that you're doing. But of course, embracing it too. I mean, be excited. You worked really hard, and you worked hard in a shorter period of time. And I'm confident in your ability, and I think you're going to go out there and rock it. And I'm excited to watch and stand by with my pitchfork, my s'more fork, and I'll just poke you along, and I think it'll be great.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited. I said scared earlier. Scared's not really the word. I'm not scared at all. I am excited. It's an adventure, and if it was easy and I knew exactly what to expect, then it would no longer be an adventure. So I think the unknown is part of what, really excites me about it.
Well, I think one of the reasons why I chose you, I remember, was because we both like to live life to the fullest, and it sure as hell would be boring if you didn't. So it's I'm gonna live vicariously through you, and it's gonna be I think a great experience, and you're gonna, when it's all said and done, and maybe like a week later after you rested, you'll be like, oh hell yeah, that was awesome.
Right.
Probably not so much.
Well, I won't curse you regardless. So.
Hey, you can curse me all you want. I'm pretty good on a mountain bike though now, so you better watch out.
Oh well, I've got some work to do there. That might be about the only thing I feel like doing for a couple of weeks after this. We'll see.
And I will actually recommend that too. So I will recommend just light biking or walking afterwards for recovery, and in just like 15 minutes, help flush it out. Otherwise, you'll be just resting. Hot Epsom salt baths, some stretching, some yoga, and really you need a full week, probably a week and a half, to really recover from this one before you can even start doing, I would say 30 minutes or more in running anyways. So, but cross training, heck yeah, it's the way to go.
Sounds good. I need an excuse to get back on the bike anyway.
Awesome. Cool. Well, awesome. I guess I will see you there.
All right. Looking forward to it. Can't wait.
All right. Yeah.